Also, depending on if you consistently act a certain way, you will get various other perks. For example, if you're continually being a James Bond character, you'll start getting game mechanic bonuses related to being a smooth operator. We also wanted to make sure that this system wasn't open for abuse either, so that if someone who continually selected aggressive or continually selected suave wouldn't get better rewards than someone who was continually testing the waters or sort of keeping neutral with all the factions and all the characters they encountered. Basically what we wanted to make sure was happening is not only having a higher or low reputation gets you bonuses, but you also get different bonuses if you sort of practice Swiss diplomacy as well. So there was a lot of reactivity related to Alpha Protocol. I'm just going to go through this really fast. There's a lot of faction involvement. We had to do a lot of tracking for how characters related to each other. This is probably our simplest example of the Alpha Protocol relationships. There was a whole host of dialogue reactivity to manage. It affected a lot of the tracking in our conversations and faction tracking. Could get more complicated. We had some really dirty Kismet scripts as a result of our Unreal 3 workings. Our animation department and scripting department, I no doubt wanted to murder us at various points. We had a lot of scripting formats for how we set up the various conversations in the game. A lot of these are pretty self-explanatory. What goal we wanted the conversation to have, any special reactivity we wanted that conversation to have, the actual text of the conversation, the different stance choices, any scripting information. The most important one, though, is this one right here. What we always try and make sure is that whenever we have a conversation like this in the game, all the assets related to that conversation are also tracked within the documentation as well. So for example, with that Moscow situation, if we need to track all the particle effects for those bullets, everything like the smoke trail coming out of Z's gun, all of that stuff has to be listed in the script document as well, and make sure that it's forwarded to all the other departments to make sure they're aware of all the tasks they need to do in order to make that conversation take place, and also how important you think each of those assets are in terms of finishing that scene. Like having a smoking gun barrel may not be terribly important, so you might knock it down to a B or C priority. But actually having a Z do the holding gun animation might be very important, so you just give it an A priority and then let the department sort it out. We do a lot of table reads for these scripts. That ends up helping reduce time at the studio. Whenever we sit around in the conference rooms and read through the scripts with each one of us taking a different character, we usually find a lot of flaws in the actual flow of the conversation or certain lines that don't sound quite right. That has been a hugely helpful process for saving time at the studio to prevent those exact same conversations from coming up when dealing with a voice actor whose time is much, much more expensive than yours. And we also do a lot of storyboarding for these scenes. We have typical dialogue exports. And, whoops. So, in conclusion. So all these 4 samples are examples of how we brought story, theme, and characters from the paper phase into actual game production. Generally, we try and make sure that the story and themes and characters actually reflect whatever the ambience or the theme of the actual game we're trying to make is. The strongest example I've presented here is Alpha Protocol. A lot of the game mechanic elements you see in that dialogue system are directly set up to reinforce the spy genre of the game. And in general, as much as I've hated working on some titles in the past and all the screaming that resulted from that, ultimately a lot of good material came out of those frustrations and just being tired of seeing those same conventions repeated again and again. I have a lot of people to thank for a lot of the work that you've seen in this presentation, especially the Alpha Protocol Cinematics team, who, when they're not hating me for my requests, they turn out fabulous work with the dialogue sequences in Alpha Protocol. And I especially wanted to thank the 2 people who were instrumental in doing character concepts for us at Obsidian and Black Isle. It's my dear friend Brian Menzie, who's responsible for Nihilus and doing work on Torment, and also my good friend Eric Campanella, who was responsible for many of the character concepts for Planescape Torment, for which I am thankful. So with that all in mind, that's pretty much all I had to say from the PowerPoint standpoint. Again, if you guys have any questions that come to you after Framework, you guys are absolutely welcome to contact me, and I will do my best to answer your questions. assuming I don't have like 6,000 messages in my inbox when I get back. Even if I do, send me an email, and if you haven't heard from me in a week, just send me a reminder. I don't get offended, I don't get upset. It just helps bump up the question, so I actually have time to answer it. So anyway, that's it. Did you guys have any questions you wanted to ask?
Well, I would take questions offline, because you've got food and stuff like that, and there's a couple of people in the audience that are starving. Please thank you, Mr. Chris.